So the word has spread by now about the disastrous launch that is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Truth be told, being a new channel, I thought about making a review for it because, let's be honest here, it would bring a bunch of clicks just trashing on a crappy movie. There were a couple things going against that. One, I really didn't want to have to actually force myself to sit down and watch that movie again. And two, I have much better things to do with my time, like actually getting this channel up and running, trolling Bud Light or Call of Duty on Twitter, and rewatching Raiders of the Lost Ark. Important things. Besides, there are a bunch of people out there who have already made videos that can describe just how awful that movie is. And if I were to try to do it, it would probably end up looking something like with this absolute train wreck that is just so disastrous you can't look away from. I think it's finally safe to say Lucasfilm is dead. And I'm glad. Here's why. Picture this. George Lucas, a fresh-faced young filmmaker who himself is a fan of a series called Flash Gordon. And George Lucas just loved this series so much, he wanted to turn it into a well-made movie. He later said this about Flash Gordon. I especially loved the Flash Gordon serials. Of course, I realize now how crude and badly done they were. Loving them that much when they were so awful, I began to wonder what would happen if they were done really well. I think we can all relate on that one. George, however, could not get the rights to Flash Gordon. And upon talking with many of his filmmaker friends, such as Steven Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola, he decided he was just going to make his own. Now, keep in mind, this is something you don't see nowadays. Back then, if somebody told you you couldn't do something, you would do it just to prove them wrong, or you would do it just to prove it to yourself that you could, whether you had help or not. Nowadays, if you don't get something you want, you go on Twitter or TikTok or Facebook or whatever it is, and you cry about the patriarchy or white supreme pizzas until you get a job on Netflix or Marvel, actually. After completion of his coming-of-age comedy drama known as American Graffiti, how many of you actually heard of that movie? Lucas finally turned his attention to his sci-fi space opera, drawing inspiration from the likes of Nixon and the Vietnam War, without pushing any political agendas or personal politics into his films, just, you know, the way it used to be done. Eventually, the script was done, and Lucas teamed up with Fox. Fox! Why did I say that so weird? Fox. 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 Lucas teamed up with. Oh, this is terrible. So, Lucas teamed up with Fox to get the movie made. However, production was not a smooth one. Everything kept breaking down, there were disasters. It says here Lucas's health was took far beyond breaking point, where he was diagnosed with hypertension, exhaustion, and was warned to reduce his stress levels, which is laughable on a film set, just saying. Unless you're making like Barney or Teletubbies or something, I don't know. It was all worth it, however, when Star Wars was finally released, and it grew into this juggernaut that we know today. Fast forward 35 years, two hit franchises, a roster of films everybody loves, hundreds of games, an infinite amount of books. And I mean an infinite. I tried counting them, there's too many, and it's just not possible. Don't question me on that, just trust me, bro. George Lucas had amassed a large, overwhelmingly loyal fan base of both old and young that just went out telling everyone who would listen about their favorite stories, from Star Wars to Indiana Jones, from Willow to Howard the Duck. Yes, I'm aware Howard the Duck is a bad movie. However, I love that movie as bad as it is because, as bad as it is, it's fun. Shut up. The point being, nerds were trusting at this time. They wanted to share what they loved with anybody who would listen because they were hoping to bring other people in and help them enjoy what they enjoyed. I'm sure there was a much easier way to go about saying something like that, but that was just awkward, I guess. Welcome to my channel. Then, October 30th, 2012, Disney announced it was purchasing Lucasfilm for 4.5 billion with a B, with half of the money paid in cash and the other half in stock, which is now worthless, in my personal opinion. So, by purchasing Lucasfilm, Disney got all of its properties, like the said mentioned Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow, and others that were in the works that we just never saw the light of day, which there's some interesting stories about that one. You should look that up when you can get the chance. Disney also got Lucasfilm's operating businesses in live action film production, consumer products, video games, animations, visual effects studios, and audio post production. Disney also acquired Lucasfilm's portfolio of entertainment technologies. To sum all of that up, Industrial Light and Magic, I'm guessing. To be completely fair, and trust me, I really do not want to be fair when it comes to Disney. However, to be fair, when this was first announced, I don't really know anybody who was upset about this. Disney was still family friendly at the time. They were still making pretty good films. And to be even more completely honest with you on this one, I was in film school. I wasn't exactly worried about Disney buying Lucasfilm. Don't get me wrong. George Lucas made the movies that inspired me to become a filmmaker in the first place. Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Look, as much as I love Howard the Duck for being as bad as it is, that movie did not inspire me to be a filmmaker as much as I love it. But Indiana Jones, Star Wars, these movies help inspire generations of people to become filmmakers, along with Jurassic Park, but that wasn't Lucas. At this time, George Lucas appointed Kathleen Kennedy to take over Lucasfilm for him. Why? My guess is she was familiar to him, and he was possibly very emotional at the time because he was selling off his baby to another giant. I don't know. I don't know the proper way to say that, but he was selling off his baby, right? And perhaps he just wanted somebody in charge who he thought he could trust, who he knew, who he was familiar with. And yes, of course, that backfired on him, but hindsight is always 2020. For those of you who are unaware of who Kathleen Kennedy is, she is Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy is the person who single-handedly destroyed Kathleen Kennedy is Kathleen Kennedy is the person who has single-handedly destroyed Lucasfilm. Kathleen Kennedy got her start in the film industry by getting coffee for Steven Spielberg, of all people, and she married her way up to a producer. And yes, Kathleen Kennedy was made a producer. However, being a producer does not mean much in Hollywood. It really doesn't. Kathleen Kennedy is not a creative in any way, shape, or form. She rode the coattails of those more creative, more successful into, being successful. Again, I gotta work on how to say some of these things. Simply put, she's a virtue signaling, no talented wannabe. That's as simple as that. It really is. Harsh? Not really. Kathleen Kennedy handpicked Star Trek killer Jar Jar Abrams. She handpicked Ruin Johnson, also known as Potato Head Johnson, also known as AKA Ryan Johnson, a man who openly stated he hated Star Wars, to him a Star Wars film. Tell me where that makes sense. Kathleen Kennedy also stated writing for Star Wars was hard because there's no source material or comics for it. We already established years of lore set in the books, comics, and games like Knights of the Old Republic. If you wanted to set a sequel trilogy after the original trilogy, then you didn't have to look very far. There was the Young Jedi Knights saga. Star Wars Young Jedi Knights followed Jacen Solo, the son of Han and Leia, who struggled with the dark side. Sounds familiar. But don't worry, he has a younger brother, Ben, as well. But Ben's not in it that much. But Jacen struggled with the dark side and eventually fell to the dark side. Tenel Ka, a strong female character who was not a Mary Sue. She fought with the fact that she never felt good enough to actually be where she's at, so she pushed herself to be tougher. She lost her arm at a certain point, spoilers, but still came back fighting. You have Jaina Solo, the daughter of Han and Leia. She may not have been the smartest. She knew her way around technology, but she wasn't the smartest. She wasn't the strongest. She had to rely on her friends to help her get through situations. Again, she was strong in her own right, but she knew her limitations. You have Lobaka, the nephew of Chewbacca, and who doesn't want to see a Wookiee wield lightsaber? I'm leaving it at that. And of course, you have Luke Skywalker, who has his niece and nephew and an academy full of students looking up to him to guide them. And not once did he give up on Jason when Jason turned to the dark side. And not once did he try to kill him. Answer me this, Disney. If Luke was willing to sacrifice his own life to save his father, then why would he try to kill Kylo? He wouldn't, because that's not Luke Skywalker. This was just one series of books from a couple of great authors that you could have easily taken from and adapted into a film. But you didn't, because your head was so far up your butt pushing political ideology that you threw away a sure thing. The Disney trilogy came out, and yes, I'm separating Star Wars from Disney Star Wars. The Disney trilogy came out, progressing worse and worse with each film. They made the Force female because reasons. They released less than metalcore, even pure abysmal shows on Disney Plus, like The Mandalorian, The Book of Babbling Fett, Kenobi, Willow. The most popular out of all of them was probably The Mandalorian. And that is a crime in itself because that show was not good. You have an entire galaxy, billions of people, hundreds of races, untold stories, uncharted planets, and the best you can come up with is an okay story. I have seen fan films by a dentist built on a shoestring budget that was better than anything you have put out since 2012. And that is embarrassing for you. Talking to Disney, not actual viewers here. There is just no excuse for the state of Star Wars. There is no excuse for Indiana Jones. There is no excuse for that monstrosity that is the Willow TV show. They destroyed Luke Skywalker's character. They destroyed Han Solo. They destroyed Indiana Jones. They destroyed Willow. They destroyed Boba Fett. He didn't talk. How did you destroy Boba Fett? I mean, I guess I can't be surprised. These are the same people that destroyed the canon with Kenobi. Either through pure hatred for George Lucas or just sheer incompetency on her part, Kathleen Kennedy has single-handedly destroyed Lucasfilm and everything under its umbrella. Even if Kathleen Kennedy got fired today, or tomorrow, or even next week, it wouldn't matter. Because Lucasfilm is dead. It died the moment George Lucas sold it to Disney. Everybody else is just finally catching up to the plot. I loved these franchises, and I still love the originals. They are what inspired me to become a filmmaker, and they inspired many others like me to become filmmakers and storytellers. And I will still have the originals to show my kids one day. However, now it's time for them to rest. Maybe in the future, somebody with love, passion, and care will come back and revive these once great sleeping giants from their slumber. Until then, I'm going to enjoy the 6 Star Wars movies and the 4 Indiana Jones movies. And yes, I said 4. I'm aware Crystal Skull is also a bad movie. But George Lucas did for Indiana Jones what Disney could never do for Lucasfilm, and that was give him a happy ending.